Today I'm going to do something I don't normally do, which is I'm actually going to sit down with you guys and I'm going to give a detailed review on the Honda CRF300 Rally. I've owned this bike for a couple of months now. I've owned a CRF300L for a year and a half. So I have a lot of information on this bike, what it's actually like to use as an owner, what it's like to run, what sort of air filter access do we have, how easy is it to maintain, cost of ownership, all these things, and of course what it's like to ride and what it's good at and what it's not good at. So stay tuned and we'll go through the whole bike and we'll talk about, you know, how it performs, what you can do to the bike to make it your own. Before we do all that, I'd like to talk about who I think the bike's for. Now, obviously it's a dual sport type bike, but you can mod it to become an adventure bike of sorts. I think the Rally suits someone like myself, 40-something years old, and I've been riding for a long time. I've been riding since I was 16, had a bit of a gap in the middle throughout my 20s, late 20s, and very early 30s, and I picked up riding again when I was about 32. And I've always rode on the street. I've always rode street bikes, and I've had everything from a Yamaha DT50, had the big 1050 XT Suzuki V-Strom touring bikes. I've also got a V-Strom 800 DE out there. But before I got the DE, I wanted something here in the Philippines that would allow me to explore a little bit more, would allow me to go on some of the roads that are not very well paved, or in fact are just gravel tracks, loose dirt roads, and even just push my boundaries a little bit and start doing a bit more off-roading.
No, it's bloody good.
I think we'll just go through the basic ergonomics of the bike. It's a dual sport, so you've got a very upright riding position. And I can even jump on it now and I'll show you. Seat height is 35 inches. On the stock model, it will squat. This one, I've got an upgraded shock on it, which I'll talk to you about later. So it doesn't squat anywhere near as much. Okay. It's a very upright position, but it's very comfortable, very neutral handling. I'm 6 foot tall. I got a 32.5-inch inside leg measurement, and I'm flat footing here on both sides. And I've got plenty of space to move around. When I bring my legs up, it's actually comfortable now. I found when I first got the bike, I just had a little bit of slight sort of twinge of discomfort in my hips here. I think that says more about me than the seating position. I think I just needed to stretch out and get used to the position. I find it really comfortable even for 300, 400 kilometers in a day. I've done that a couple of times now, and yeah, the first time was a little bit tough on my ass, but the second time I thought, God, yeah, I'm used to it now, I'm fine. So I find it comfortable. I find the handlebar position is comfortable. I wouldn't mind it being slightly higher, so I am half tempted to change the bars out for a bar with a different rise on it, just to add a little bit of height to it. Switch gear is very simple, which I really like. I didn't buy this bike to get loads of technology. This one doesn't even have ABS on it, which doesn't bother me at all, but there is a model with ABS. So the grips are a little bit hard, but they offer not bad grip. Again, I'll talk about the mods on the bike in a little bit. Levers, so we've got a slip and assist clutch on this. It makes the clutch pull really, really light. Even in around town, I can one finger pull this very comfortably and have absolute control over the clutch. Again, with the brake lever, it's non-adjustable, unfortunately. I've got small to medium-sized hands, and the clutches and the brake levers are comfortable in a nice position. Obviously, you can rotate them to get them into the correct positioning for you. The switch gear, we've got a full beam, and we've got a horn, and we've got indicators on this side. We've got a kill switch, hazard lights, and starter here, and that's your lot for switch gear. And I quite like it that way, if I'm honest. I like basic stuff. I like simple stuff that's going to work, that's not going to cause me problems. So then we have a very simple LCD dash. It's not a TFT or anything. It's a basic LCD dash, angled nicely towards you. I find with this screen, actually, yeah, it's simple, it's basic. It gives you everything you need apart from range. So it gives you your average fuel consumption, your average speed, gives you the liters or the amount of fuel you have currently consumed on the current trip. It gives you trip meters 1, 2, and an odometer. It actually has a stopwatch on it as well if you're doing lap times, maybe lap times around the island or something. It gives you a digital tachometer. It gives you a gear position indicator as well, and obviously it gives you your speed. I think that's pretty much everything on the dash. But the main thing about the dash is it's really easy to read and see. All the information, when you're looking ahead, just a quick glance down and you've got all the information you need right there, which is perfect. We've got this screen, which I find effective up to about 85, 90 kilometers an hour. It is reasonably effective at clearing the wind around me and not over me. I get some wind in the top of my head, but it's not turbulent. Even when I'm riding it with a visor, it just, you know, if I've got a peak on my helmet, it doesn't catch the peak and lift it too much. So it's pretty decent, and it also shelters you from the weather. I noticed with these panels that we've got on here that go around the tank, the bigger tank on the Rally, it offers a little bit of protection from the rain if you're tucking your legs in nicely. And this as well offers just that little bit of protection so your visor's not getting absolutely caked in dust, mud, rain, whatever. What I really like about it is that they've put on this really useful accessory bar, and you can probably see I've got a RAM mount on here at the moment which holds a TomTom GPS unit, and it's just in a really nice location just to easily mount here. So this is great, perfect. One thing Honda have done as well, which I really appreciate on this, particularly with my TomTom sat-nav, the battery life is good. It'll do 6 hours, but I don't want it running out near the end of my trip because that's probably where I'm trying to find where I'm staying. And that would be the worst time for it to run out because I'm in the middle of nowhere, don't know where I am, I've got to get to somewhere. Down inside this panel here, they've already wired in a switchable power outlet. So I actually have a little accessory coming for that, which means I can just click it in here, the accessory USB charging port, and then I can hook that up to my TomTom. And it's switchable, as I say, so it will turn off once you turn the ignition off. So it's a basic bike, but it just has enough. You know, I really love that they've got that. I don't have to wire it in through to the battery. That's dead handy. I love the accessory bar. As I say, I'll talk about the mods just that I've done that have just brought it up to exactly what I want. In terms of the seat, as I said, it's 35 inches. I think it's 894 millimeters, but on the stock bike, it squats down a lot. So you are, even with my 32.5-inch inside leg, 6 foot height, I'm flat footing it, which makes it really confidence inspiring when you're an off-road novice like me. I've been riding bikes for years and I'm pretty fearless on the off-road, but I'm not skilled yet, right? Let's put it that way. And so having that comfort of being able to easily get your feet down, combined with the lightweight, 150 kilos, it just inspires confidence to push up that track where you think, oh God, if it was a big 200 plus kilo bike worth 15 grand, I'm not sure I'm gonna go up here. On this one, you'll think, yeah, I'll take it up, it's fine, no problem. We've got the 21-inch front, which means that you're gonna absorb the bumps, the potholes, the rocks, things like that better. Got a good lot of tire choice on that as well if you're gonna switch out the tires. And we've got an 18-inch rear, so it's like the standard sort of off-road dual sport setup. And we've got 43 millimeter upside down forks, which are a little soft, but nothing in comparison to what I found on the rear shock, which we'll get into in a bit. Non-adjustable forks. We've got a preload adjustment on the rear suspension, on the rear shock. I didn't find the preload made too much difference, to be honest. I did have a play around with it, didn't make that much difference. One of the most important things for me on the Rally is this tank. So we've got a 12-litre fuel tank, and it makes the difference from the L model. It just makes the difference of always being concerned with fuel and how much fuel you've got left to rarely being concerned about it. If I fill this tank up, I know it's going to do a full day's riding for me pretty much, and I might fill up at the end of the day for the next day. LED turn signals, indicators. On the American model, I don't know if they've caught up yet. You'd have to double check whether they're LED or not. Driving at night, the lights are good. The lights give a nice wide throw and they go quite far, so they give pretty decent depth and they're pretty bright. And then full beam is just like light the whole thing up. It's like being in a floodlit stadium. So then obviously they're not top spec, but they're more than good enough to ride at night. They give a nice wide throw so that when you're going around corners, you can look into your corner and you're still getting some light on it. So pretty happy with the lights on it. The suspension, as I said, 43 millimeter inverted forks. They only have a spring in one side, unbelievably. That's a cost-saving measure, and again, bear in mind the price of the bike, but yeah, it's a cost-saving measure, so they're only sprung in one side. and they're sprung pretty lightly. So you got to think that a lot of these bikes are going to be sold in the Asian market, where people are generally lighter framed than us Westerners. And so they are sprung a little bit soft for Westerners. But honestly, unless you are a better rider than me off-road, so if you're, if you're more advanced than me, I would say if you're intermediate or, or advanced rider off-road, or if you're significantly heavier than me, I'm 87 kilos, then they're manageable. I mean, I'm in two minds whether to actually do anything with those, and I'm going to do some longer trips on this bike, and then I'll make a decision, I think. So the forks are okay. The brakes are fine. The brakes are a 296 millimeter disc, just single disc up front. It's a little bit of a bigger disc than you get on the 300L model. And that's just because there's a little bit of extra weight on this bike compared to the L. Stopping power is fine. I've done a couple of emergency stops on them. I haven't even got ABS on them. So with ABS on, you'll probably find that you'll actually brake a little bit better than I can, because I am my own ABS, which could be dangerous, but whatever. And the brake's fine. Particularly off-road, they're great because they haven't got a strong initial bite. So they're not going to surprise you. You're not going to tuck the front or anything like that. But there is feel on them, so you can be progressive with the brakes. You certainly can feel it. I mean, I brake with two fingers when I'm actually starting to go to a one-finger clutch, one-finger brake setup with, how I ride. And there's plenty of feel on the brakes, plenty of feel at the lever. I'm happy with the brakes the way they are, bearing in mind the weight of the bike, the power of the bike. So then we'll get down, obviously the main change, in the name at least, is the 300 Rally, not the 250 Rally. So we've got a 286cc single cylinder, 4-stroke engine, of course, and it's a 6-speed gearbox. So these are all just the stats. What does it mean in reality? It means there's a little bit more grunt. I owned a 250L as well, so I can relate. Compared to the 250L, it's got a little bit more pull in all the gears. So it's got a little bit more torque. I think it pulls better from down low as well. And the gearing is nicer on it. The gearing has been shortened up, so it pulls through every gear. So there's a combination of the additional 36cc or whatever it is, 37cc, gives you that little bit extra, but also the gearing is much, much better. And so I'll be riding along, cruising well, not even cruising, putting along at 30 or 40 kilometers an hour, so like 20 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour. And you can be in fourth gear doing that, and the engine's not chugging, it's not dying or anything on you. And then that fourth gear will pull you all the way up to 100 kilometers an hour easily. And it's quite flexible. It gives you it means you're not having to flick through the gears constantly. You can if you want to, but there is pulling the engine from down low all the way up. It runs out a little bit at 8,000, 8,500 RPM, but it gets you up to 100 kilometers an hour, 110 kilometers an hour quickly. It's got enough to nip around things at that speed. It's got enough to pull uphill at that speed, even loaded up. And it'll cruise. So sixth gear, they've done it almost like an overdrive, and it's geared high, so you can cruise and it drops the revs down. So 2 to 5 is your pulling gears, and then when you want to cruise for a little bit, you've got a long stretch, whack it in sixth, and then your fuel economy is great, and it'll still pull in sixth. Not hard, but it will still accelerate a little bit in sixth, which is a bonus. One thing I like about this as well is, and one of the main considerations being here in the Philippines, and if any of you guys are going to travel on this bike into more remote locations, is it'll take bog standard fuel, unleaded. So you don't need to put premium fuel in it. I wouldn't expect it to need premium, but for instance, something some people don't consider on like my V-Strom 800, it needs premium fuel, which is a bit, okay, because it's not always available here. And in lots of parts of the world, the premium's not always available. So that, again, keep it nice and simple. You can use any fuel you want. So gearbox, I'm really happy with. It's smooth, it's very positive. I never get any false neutrals. You know what gear you're in at all times. There's no skipped gears, no missed gears. It's just well put together. It's smooth. I don't have any issues with the gearbox whatsoever. It's a good gearbox. As I'd expect from Honda, no issues with it at all. Foot pegs come with rubber inserts. I'm probably going to take them out, to be honest. I don't find there's that much vibration on this bike, not considering it's a single cylinder. I don't have buzzy hands at the end of a long ride or anything like that. So I don't think I need the rubber foot pegs. Sitting down, they're fine. Standing up, a little bit narrow. They're okay, but I'd like a bigger platform for when I'm riding standing up. I don't like the side stand on it. It doesn't feel sturdy, the side stand. It feels weak, and you're never quite sure. And it's changed now because I've changed the shock on it, but before it leant over a lot. So stock, so now we're at about this angle. At stock, it would lean over like this, and I find myself constantly double checking it. I double check it. I'm not confident with it. And in fact, before I put the shock in, I parked it in a car park, and it was leant over a lot. It just went down, and that was when I dropped the bike. Stock tires, I'm all right with them. A lot of people hate the stock tires. I don't love the stock tires. They're not hugely confidence inspiring, but they're okay on the road, and they're okay off-road. And if that's about your level of riding, okay, you can make do with them, which is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna run them down, and then I'll replace them with something better. But they're not shocking. I mean, I'll be riding along trail, which is what they call Gizo over here. It's like a hard pack, but with a really loose surface, and then ruts and divots and washouts and stuff on it. And I'll be running along on that at 60, 70 kilometers an hour without issue, cornering at 40, 50 kilometers an hour with no issues in terms of traction. So yeah, I mean, you can make do. I think you can make do with the stock tires unless you already know that you are going to push it more than I would push it, and you do a different kind of riding, or your level's more advanced than mine, or you know, you just want to put the best tires on. Fair enough.
I am happy with that.
It does have the 5K rattle. Don't know what that is, but when you hover around about 5K, it does make some sort of weird disconcerting noise. And it's not just this one, my CRF300L has it as well. In fact, I've got two CRF300Ls, and they both have it. So it's something in the design somewhere, but it doesn't seem to be, well, let's see, but it doesn't seem to be causing an issue at the moment. I just ignore it, and I just go slightly faster or slightly slower, or change up the gears or something. But the engine's a beaut. It has enough power for everything, and off-road it has plenty of power for me, more than enough power for me to have fun. Not just to putt around, but you can have fun on it as well. If I'd have bought a 300cc bike and complained that it was slow, that's my fault, right? I don't see why anyone would complain about it. So for me, knowing it's 300cc there or thereabouts, it's great. It's great. The gearing is the best thing on it. You can easily overtake, you can hold your speed, it will pull uphill, which is important. That's one of the reasons I just got rid of the CRF 150L. It just wouldn't pull me uphill without, you end up knocking down, and then you're between first and second gear all the time. This thing's fine, fourth gear, third gear maybe, but fourth most of the time. Fifth pulls as well. Only sixth, where it will still accelerate slightly, depending on whether you're flat or uphill. It will still go in sixth, but it's more like a car overtaking speed, you know, like you sort of just glide around stuff. One gear, it'll nip along. So really flexible gearing on it, really good gearing on it. Okay, rear shock. That's my one real complaint about the bike. And again, you could make do on it. And if it was a case of it just not being great off-road, I'm not great off-road, so we'd match. You know what I mean? It would be like, well, okay. But what I didn't like was there's a pogo stick effect. So if I'm riding along and I go to the brow of a hill quickly, I mean, I'm talking like if you're doing 80, 90 kilometers an hour, so fairly quickly. You go to the brow of the hill and up and over, the bike lifts, and you feel that wallow and bounce as you're going down and out of the bottom of the hill or the hump, you know? It's too soft. For my weight at 87 kilos, for my frame, it's too soft. And there is a preload adjustment on it, but it's not enough. It's just sprung for like a 60 kilo or 65 kilo rider. If you're okay with that, if you don't ride at 190 plus kilometers an hour, if you are just literally putting around, or if you weigh far less than I do, then you might get away with it. And you're just gonna have to see for yourself what you think of it, what you'll tolerate in terms of that softness and bounciness. The one thing that is good about the stock shock is for off-road, if you're just doing like gravel tracks and stuff, but you're going at a slow pace, it's like it's quite a plush ride, so it absorbs the bumps and stuff. So if you are just touring but on tracks and stuff, you might like it because it's pretty soft. It makes it a comfortable ride apart from the bouncing, which kind of didn't do anything good for my back, to be honest. So that's one of the replacements that I did, and I'm not going to say everyone else you need to do it. I think the stock shock is adequate. I think you could get away with it. I think you don't need to immediately upgrade it, but if you are looking to upgrade the bike, the first thing I'd look at is the shock. That's the way I look at it. Okay, so I've pretty much gone through the bike there in terms of what you get and what I like about it. There are a couple of negatives, one of them being the shock that I've talked about previously. There is a lack of overtaking power if you're going to run highways a lot. And I mean, if you buy a 286, 300cc bike, you're going to know that anyway. That's obvious. That just goes with the territory. And again, I knew that was going to be the case because I have a 300L. But even before I bought that, I know that's going to be the case because it's a 300cc bike. The only other thing I'd say as an owner is when you get your bike, check your bolts. So I had several loose bolts on mine, and I only found that out because I was tinkering with it. So a couple of the side panel bolts were loose, and the screen bolts up here, they were also loose. So check those when you get it. So here is obviously the shock. So I actually have put a rally raid in. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail later on in the video. So a couple of these bolts here were loose, and some of them are over torqued as well. And then I had on my screen, so a couple of these, this one was loose, and this was actually not even on properly. It wasn't into the rubber grommet here properly. So just check. I would just give your bike, and it's probably a good idea to do that anyway, but give your bike a once over when you get it. I also found when I put this crash guard on, this Outback Motortech crash guard, that the engine bolt was over torqued. So there's a bolt that goes through here, the engine mounting bolt, that was over torqued. And when I put on the rally raid shock, you have to undo the spring, undo the bolt in the top of the shock here, and then you have to undo this one, and just loosen this one off here. This one was over torqued like crazy. So yeah, just check those if you want to. But they weren't greased either. They're not greased, and I can presume from that quite a lot of the bolts are not greased from the factory. So might be something that you guys want to do, perhaps with the first maintenance, is have your dealer check that like the axles are greased and the bolts are greased properly and stuff, because they were stiff and they were tough to get out when they shouldn't have been. But apart from that, I don't really have any major negatives on the bike. I just think overall it's a fantastic bike. What's it actually like to own the Rally? Well, first off, I'd say it's meeting my expectations. So what I wanted for the bike, I think, as I said, was I wanted something that's simple, economical, it's cheap to buy, cheap to run, cheap to mod if I want to, and it's reliable. And so far, it is all those things. Access is really easy. So you can either take off the plastic bash guard, and then it's just a drain bolt under here. You can leave the bash guard on. For the first one, I left the bash guard on, the skid plate on, because there's a hole in it at the bottom, so you can just undo the drain plug, pop your oil out. We've got the oil filter in here. Be careful on these screws, because they're not particularly strong, and I was testing out a new torque wrench and snapped one on my CRF300L when I did an oil change, but I didn't on this one because I learned from that mistake pretty quickly. But they're not particularly strong, so I hand tighten and then quarter of a turn, and that's more than enough. So oil change is dead easy and dirt cheap. It's running me, for every oil change, it's running me like $15, $20. Service intervals are every 8,000 kilometers. Airbox access, again, is very, very easy. So it's not on this side, it's on the other side. But you basically remove this panel on the other side, and then you're straight into your air filter, couple of screws, couple of little plastic plugs, just pop it out, and then it's straight in and out. I'm actually getting a replacement one rather than using the OEM one. So the OEM one, I think they recommend to change every 12,000 kilometers. It's really dusty here a lot of the time and dirty, so I'll be doing that more regularly. But again, all the parts, and part of the great thing about this bike is that it's cheap to buy, it's cheap to run, it's cheap to maintain, and it's simple. So air filter access is nice and easy. Changing the oil is literally a 10-minute job, and most of that 10 minutes is waiting for the oil to drain out. And the oil is readily available and cheap, and the air filters are cheap. So as far as I'm concerned, it's really a nice bike to own and maintain, and it actually encourages me to maintain it myself. I'll show you the mods that I've done. And so I've done, the first mod I did was I put these Acerbis handguards on it. They've had a drop and they've worked well. They had the drop, they got a few scuffs on, but nothing else was damaged at all. This Rally does come with plastic handguards, but they're nothing, you know. They will snap if you blow on them. Then I wanted some protection on these plastics here. I love the look of this bike. I love the plastics on it. I think it looks great. It just, you know, makes me dream that I'm a rally rider and I can ride the Dakar, but I can't. But, you know, it makes you dream like that. And so I wanted to protect those plastics, and I looked for various solutions, and I ended up, because of where I am, the easiest one to get that was decent quality was Outback Motortech crash bars. And these, again, they haven't had a proper test yet, but they do test them on their website, and I've seen they protect. They've had one test where they fell over, and they weren't marked up, and none of the plastics or anything else was marked up. So they did the first job, because these plastics, without these crash guards on, would have been scratched and scuffed where it dropped. So they do the job. And then, of course, the main thing, and my big spend on this, was the Rally Raid shock, which I ended up paying £700 for, which on my previous video I put it up, I'll put up the dollar price, but it works out, I think, something like $850 US. That made the world of difference. This back end now, when I get on this bike, it feels like a proper bike. So when I used to get on it, it really squatted down, and you'll see in my first impressions video, if you look back at that, you'll see how much the bike squatted. Well, now you can see the difference now. It's going down, it's squatting a little bit, but I haven't even messed with the preload adjuster on it yet. But we're within what I would deem to be very acceptable sag levels now, and the ride quality and comfort is superb now. I'll just put it on the screen what I've spent overall on this Rally build so far. I also, as I mentioned, have a USB charging port coming here that fits into the switched accessory cable here, switched accessory port here. And that, I believe now, for me, this bike is ready to go now. I'm ready to go and tour the Philippines, which is exactly what I plan on doing with it. For anyone who's interested in this bike, I can't recommend it enough. I really, really enjoy this bike. It's transformed my riding in a way. The bigger bikes, they make me ride within my limits, so I never learn, I never progress. And I've got to the age now where I really do want to do more off-road riding. Riding on roads for me now is great if I'm exploring, but I really enjoy that kind of trail riding, gravel tracks, dirt roads, things like that. I really enjoy that kind of riding, and this bike has really, really helped me get into that and try to learn more about that and learn better technique and become a better rider. And the fact that it's reliable, cheap to buy, cheap to mod, cheap to maintain, it makes it easy to work on your bike when it's so open. Okay, you've got some plastics here, but I know exactly what's underneath. A couple of bolts here to take the plastics off, and you're straight into the engine casing and stuff. And you know, even just things like doing your own oil filter change, fitting mods and accessories, changing the shock out, changing your tire pressures. All those maintenance things have made me bond with this bike more than I've bonded with any of my other bikes, I think. If you're in the market for one, I don't see much in the way of competition. I'm really, really happy with this bike. I really would recommend it if it suits your intentions. I love it. I absolutely love this bike, and yeah, there's not much I'd change on it. What would I change if I could change anything? Well, the shock, clearly. The forks, I might make them adjustable, but I'd probably just change the spring rate, to be honest, to suit my weight. No, farkle it up with a few accessories like the hand guards, the crash guards. Change the foot pegs out for wider ones. Okay, if you kept it the same weight and you made it a 450cc, yeah, okay, I'd be well happy with that. That would be perfect. And so I think that pretty much concludes my review. I hope you found it useful. If you have, I'd really appreciate it if you did hit the like, subscribe, and notifications bell so that you'll be notified of upcoming videos. I'll be doing more videos on this. I've got some great routes coming up in the mountains, off-road stuff. And then I also have a variety of other bikes that obviously I'll be doing videos and stuff on. Have a CF Moto 450 MT reserved, so I'll be getting one of those in the future because that bike could be a unicorn bike if the reliability's there. But I certainly won't be getting rid of my Rally for it. In fact, I don't think I'll be getting rid of my Rally until either I die or it dies. That's a pretty good summary. The Rally dies or I die, that's when the Rally will go. Otherwise, I'm keeping it. I love it. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.